what's going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by Jennifer Lopez. Basically, this product is called This Is Me Then, and it came out in the fall of 2002. So the thing about this particular product is this is the sequel album to Jennifer Lopez's hit album from 1999. Or actually, she dropped an album. This is actually the third studio album by Jennifer Lopez. The second one was I think it was called J-Lo. It came out in 2001. So there was an album. I thought this was the follow-up to From the Six or On the Six. There's an album that came out in 1999. I'll look that up real quick. Yeah, J-Lo had an album that came out in 1999 called On the Sixth. I remember that particular one had some good dance club hits on there as far as this pitch can happen. But then she did drop an album that was kind of a quieter relative type product, but it did have some bops on there, which was J-Lo from 2001. As she started to kind of go by that nickname more as far as this pitch can happen, started to reach more widespread type appeal and like the music market, some of those type pitches. But this particular album has some good flair about it. I don't remember this album as commonly, but it did have this particular album did have some top 3 singles as far as this pitch can happen. One of which hit number 1, which I think was it was either Jenny from the Block, I forget which one, but Jenny from the Block and All I Have with LL Cool J both. All I Have with LL Cool J hit number 1, so some good type pitches. J-Lo continued her streak of being able to nail these particular vibes and the music market, in addition to acting, some of the things that she had done in the 90s, some of that type fare. So the good type pitch of her being a chameleon and just a more tycoon type music, being a more tycoon type celebrity within those fairs. So she's basically pulling off hat tricks, some of those type flares as far as those pitches can happen with it. It was a good type appeal. Now the thing about this particular product that's different from at least what I remember of On the Six as far as this pitch can happen is it does not have dance club songs in the same fury as some of the hits Waiting for Tonight and the relative kind of simmering type slow jam type appeal of If You Had My Love, some of those type pitches. And I don't remember the singles from J-Lo from 2001, but I want to say one of those songs hit number 1 and some pitches like that. So they might have had some R&B type plush about it. This is a lot more soulful within the pitch, a little bit more soulful. It's a lot more soulful within the pitch, a little bit more rosy just within the tone. Not quite as feral. I mean, minus the lead single Jenny from the Block. That's probably the song with the most jive on here as far as those pitches can happen. But this is a very quality album within the pitch behind it. I'm not trying to have the tone as if this is not within some excellence as far as this pitch can happen, but the pitch behind it, it's more this is kind of a strange era for R&B type stuff, because this is more of a soulful type product, more so than the dance and kind of Europop type tone of some of her earlier type products. So it's within the pitch of being able to say that this particular album came at a time when R&B was starting to get more electro type vibes with folks like Sean Paul and Beyonce and Usher and some of those type folks. But it's just within the pitch. I mean, J-Lo translates to this pretty well. Jenny from the Block is a real boppish type song, and this album, the songs I'm going to recommend on here, basically out of 12 songs, or at least 11 original songs, I wound up recommending 8. So that's the vast majority of this particular product going to get a relatively good score and high scores as far as this pitch can happen with that look within the tone. And this is kind of a secret type project within a lot of senses. It feels kind of underappreciated nowadays just within the pitch. There's some notable R&B that kind of came out at a good time as R&B was starting to transform in pitches like that. I'd have to say has more hits on here than what would probably be designated just in the pitch. I feel when this came out, Beyonce was kind of garnering more attention. Not that there's any problem with that. And then pitches like B2K kind of came out around this time. There just were some appeals type around here, but kind of felt like J-Lo, while she did have that relative appeal, it kind of felt like her more tie-ins around this particular time were just more the aspect of her dating Ben Affleck, who does have a song on this particular product. It's not him so much that has a song, but a song designated to him, kind of like what Taylor Swift would do with her Flames and some of those high pitches just in the tone behind it. So there's a song on here called Dear Ben, is because folks were following her around with them pitches like that. The paparazzi constantly, J-Lo and Ben Affleck, or I forget the name that they had. It was they used to do fusion names, kind of like Kim Ye and some of those type pitches. I forget what J-Lo and Ben Affleck's one was, but it was within the concept. They dropped a movie called Geely, some of those type pitches. But yeah, J-Lo was kind of within an urban type pitch on this particular album and has some good flair about it, more so than On the Six from 99 and relative the more dance kind of R&B type sound of J-Lo within those pitches. But some good type flair. I do like the aspect behind this. This is a New York-esque type sound, so it does kind of have some of that Bronx type flavor. LL Cool J and Jadakiss Styles P, some of those type folks are on here within that type of appeal. There is a Spring Break-esque type song, which was a pretty good concept, kind of get some of those. But yeah, like I was saying, this isn't the pitch behind it. There's not a ton of real the fury. If you are looking for a song like Waiting for Tonight by Jennifer Lopez, it doesn't have that relative type snap. It's something a little bit more up tempo where you're going to shake your ass in the club as far as those pitch can happen. It's more foot tap kind of grooves and wine and dime type slow jam type vibes just within the jive behind it, more so than the concept of actual kind of furor within the pitch. So it's not as much for full blown crazy, but it's melded type sound. But I like the tone behind it. Some good type appeals. It's gonna have more kind of sedate type R&B as far as those pitch can have, and just the calmer type sense of not being so quite just frenetic and pitch like that. So it's not as much Friday type music, more Tuesday and Sunday type music, I would feel like, within the appeal behind it. Just beginning of the week, kind of more within the tone of disc, Bay nearby within some of those type pitches, more days for kind of more sit down and disc, kind of pleasant kind of activity as opposed to like ferocious kind of appetite within the flair behind it. It's just within the pitch, but it works for what it is. J-Lo pulls this off. It's not boring within the pitch. I mean, there are some ballads on here within that sluggish type sense. On the Six had some of those as well from what I remember, some of those more type ones, but it's, for the most part, it nails most of these vibes within the tone behind it. So it's just good type flair for that. So, yeah, there were 4 singles off this product. So it did a lot of appeal, like I said, 2 of which were top 30 singles. So the first single was Jenny from the Block. It's like a city hop kind of spring break type vibes kind of get here. Nice real immediate type flavor. This is a real nice one to kind of get. Nice pep and flair to this particular song. J-Lo being extra stylish on this particular song. Jadakiss and Styles P are on here. Good type flair for that. And this is just good for some outs. Real nice boppish type one. There's some New York kind of jive just in the pitch behind it. This is probably how, I can't think of like a ton of like New York kind of R&B artists apart from maybe Alicia Keys as far as those pitches kind of happen. This is a good type of appeal to kind of get some of that Bronx flavor. Cardi B would later be from NY as far as those pitches kind of happen, kind of doing some of that type of sound. Not like this, but it's just a good tone just to kind of forget about J-Lo. Just for folks who may have forgotten about J-Lo, just within the flair of remembering just some of that kind of just big city type vibes, kind of get some of that R&B just within a New York and kind of Philadelphia and like Boston type sense, some of those type flares within the tones behind it. Detroit, some of those type places that I had to say. The song was a big deal around the time. This definitely was a pretty big deal, and like seemingly on MTV, VH1, some of those type places. This had a real nice casual groove. This is one of those ones that was kind of, like I was saying, this is a little bit secondary compared to some of the stuff in R&B around the time, but it definitely did have like the appeal of being like a relative hot shot type song, kind of get within that tone. It is something that you probably were going to hear more often than you were. It was just kind of one that just feels somewhat seldom, just because I question how many times platinum this particular album went, but it was more of a big deal than it wasn't. So, but all I have was the second single, and this has LL Cool J on here. It's a good look for around this particular time. It's another one. This hit #1, which this is a song probably needs to be played more on the radio. I'd say just the concept, like when you think of J-Lo nowadays, I kind of question like the songs you would hear on the relative radio. It kind of feels like it is kind of here and there, just with rhythmic radio nowadays, as to what songs would kind of be played, just because she doesn't have like that signature. She doesn't have that signature type song like, you know, I would probably say like Rihanna with Umbrella, or like one of those type of songs, Live Your Life, some of those type of tones, or like, you know, T-Pain with like Buy You a Drink, some of those type pitches just within the tone behind it. Just kind of feels like that's kind of one of the reasons why I reviewed this particular product. It feels so seldom. This is definitely one I wanted to get to bring more notation towards it, because I think folks in certain senses know at least about J-Lo in terms of what she's done in music, but it just kind of feels like she moreover gets the shaft in terms of like some of the accolades that she collected, because she does have several #1s here. It's just within the pitch, but all I have is one of those. So all I have is like a vintage kind of mixtape soul, I'd have to say, just some around the house kind of NY flavor, just DJ drama flavor type tune as far as those pitch can happen. Interesting pitch, because this is kind of before DJ drama and those type of East Coast mixtapes were full blown kind of around. I mean, they were released in New York, 50 Cent, some of those type of folks were doing it. It's a good type tone that J-Lo is able to catch on to this particular type flair. It's the sound that feels like Jay-Z's The Blueprint, and vintage kind of LL Cool J, some of those type folks, vintage 50 Cent, some of that type flair, I'd have to say. It's like some local errands and softcore kind of vibing kind of get here. So it's just good duet with these two as far as those pitches can happen. Just nails the appeal behind it. Basically like getting a DJ drama mixtape song with some of that soulfulness where you smoke a L2 or something like that, just within the tone of just being a #1 song and just within an R&B softcore type format. So it's just a good type pitch for that. Just having a lady's perspective on like a usual mixtape soul type tune. So it's a good pitch. I'm Glad is the third single, and it's like some relative kind of evening dredge here, I'd have to say. Just a jazzy kind of makeshift relief to kind of get within that tone. Just smooth kind of cruise, I'd have to say about this one. Just real nice softcore type, just basic Traverse, I'd say. Some extra time type song kind of get. It's kind of one, there's some moments on this particular album that just kind of feel strange to listen to, because you kind of question where exactly you listen to them. You kind of question where exactly you listen to them, just because of the pitch, that they're not necessarily dance club songs, not necessarily full-blown hangout type songs, but they just kind of feel like moments that are just kind of not here, not there, just within within the pitch, just wondering, the concept of, I just feel like some moments where you have like some spare time as far as those pitches can happen, just within the aspect of just having some, yeah, just to say spare time is within the pitch behind it. And this like some Smokey comedy to kind of get here, just rosy type times just within the pitch behind it. This is kind of a wine and dine type album within the pitch behind it, just more simplistic, kind of not necessarily chauvinistic, but just graceful type flair within the pitch behind it, just in like a big city type setting within the pitch as far as that kind of goes. This is, I'd probably say if Jenny from the Block is more at like noon and 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock is like the sun is out, some of that type flair. I feel like I'm Glad's more of just like 6:37, some of that type pitch as far as just kind of the relief of just in the rel. It's just kind of a real, not necessarily balmy type song, but just kind of like smarmy type song within a relative sense of just kind of being, just kind of feels like Pink Skies type music. And this is a song that hit like the top 40 on the Billboard 100. I think it at least got relatively high. Baby I Love You is one that hit like the top 75. I'd have to say with some good type pitches kind of get these. So some good type appeal. This nice secondary extra type song kind of get within that tone. Just some kind of softcore makeshift just in the sense behind it. Real Smokey type song. Real like the appeal behind it. And then Baby I Love You is the nice fourth single. It's another nice bop here to kind of get. It's like a vintage and throwback J-Lo to like the 1999 album on the 6 as those pitches can happen. Just basic neighborhood extra moments kind of get here and just some silkiness just be able to have. So just kind of within the tone, just kind of like the same aspect of like a song like If You Had My Love, just within the pitch, same sort of almost format, not quite as hitting as full blown and quite as affable in like the chorus, but just within the, not quite as casually radio snap ready within the pitch behind it, but still a nice gem to kind of get within that tone and just like a revisit as far as those pitches can happen. Just good type flavor. I would really has some good type appeal. It's good to get to like the fourth single as far as those pitches can happen. Feels like less likely that some of these later ones, I mean, even nowadays, it's not as commonly likely to hear All I Have, which was a #1 on the radio for the most part within that relative type flair. It just kind of feels like, I mean, I may not be listening to the radio every day, but it just feels like I may not be listening to the radio every day, but I look within the pitch as far as that flair kind of happens. These are just some good moments that kind of feel, in very many cases, forgotten about just in the pitch. But Baby I Love You is a nice one to kind of get. Just real nice Latin pop type tune to kind of get within that pitch. Real nice flavor towards it. So that's the flair behind this particular album in terms of the singles. So it nails these particular vibes, but I will say that the mildly unfortunate aspect is just like the relative balance and just pep of like a good dance club type, relative two-step type bop like Jenny from the Block. There really isn't any other song that really comes relatively close to that. That's kind of the concept. It's not necessarily that it falls for like the relative R&B trap, but not having anything jivey, but it's just kind of within the pitch that's like the spiciest song on here in terms of like the mostly pitch behind it. It does have other songs. J-Lo does pull off some of these styles. There's a kind of serenade type song and a more romantic type song and All I Have in a mixtape type format. I'm Glad like some good makeshift, and then like Baby I Love You is like some good kind of evening Sunday music type romance within the tone behind it, but it's just kind of within the pitch that there's just not like another. I do think this might have actually had more fury if it had had like a song like Waiting for Tonight on here, which it just kind of somewhat dodges, which is not, it's not like it dodges like it's just purposely, but it's just kind of concept that there's just not terribly much like, there's just not terribly much jump on this particular product, but it is still pretty rock solid, I'd have to say. So within the tone, I look after just being able to say out of 12 songs on here are really 11, because one song, the one, is basically like it's the same song just called version 2. It's not really too much different from that one, but I basically don't recommend either version of the one. That's what I was talking about here. So it's more like 8 out of 11 that I recommend. So I'm going to kind of meld the score somewhat as a result of that, because it's just basically like getting the same song twice that I don't recommend. But the 4 songs I don't recommend on here would be both versions of the one, Dear Ben, and then the song again. So basically the one song, the one songs, and again are basically just like some wine and dine type songs. I just feel like the song that pulls out that particular vibe a little bit better with like that Sunday type music within that romance, have pasta, watch movies type fare is just a song like I've Been Thinking that just nails that particular vibe a lot better. Just has a little bit more charm towards it just within the tone. Some of these just feel like dredgy type ones, but it's just further romantic type Sunday music to kind of get along with songs like I'm Glad and I've Been Thinking, some of those type pitches I'd have to say as far as those tones can happen, but some of these just don't have as much full-blown appeal. And I'd probably say Dear Ben is like that too. All 3 of these are more like Sunday kind of romance type tunes to kind of get within that tone. Just kick back and just appreciate like finer things just within the aspect, appreciate the more courteous type life just within the aspect as far as like this tone of just like some basic kind of saunter type music in a romantic sense. It's just kind of the tone. I do like these songs would be nailed better, but it's just like they're just a little bit plainer. It's the same sort of complaint that I had about On on the 6th. Even though I haven't reviewed that particular product yet, I do remember a lot of those songs on there. Just maybe not a lot, but just relative to the concept of this more simmering, kind of typical ballad-esque. Is this the same sort of appeal? Typical kind of R&B album type complaint to get some of that just in the tone, as far as just having like ballads that are just kind of more this. They work for what they are in terms of the concept of having like mood set type music just within the tone, but just within the aspect that there's just not as many like jive type songs to make up for the lack of this like spark on this particular product. So it's just the tone that there's at least 5 of these on here as far as those pitches can happen. Some of them nail them better as far as those pitches kind of happen, but it's just kind of the tone. There are some mid-pace type grooves on here. They may not be like full-blown dance crazes, but there are some songs like You Belong to Me and like Still and Loving You that have some relative type pep towards them. It's just kind of the tone that it just switches to more mid-groove, more mid-tempo type songs more so than actual up-tempo type ones. But Jenny from the Block's like the only one that does. Jenny from the Block's like the only up-tempo one, but there are some ones that kind of have the pitch, having like some down-tempo type ones. But most of these that just don't have as much down to that. The concept what I'm going to score is down me recommending 8 out of 11 or 8 out of 12. Just in between that, I'd say I'm going to give this album like an 8.5 out of 10 just within the pitch, because I would feel like 9 out of 12 would be like an 8.75. So just within the pitch, up in the score from like 2/3 of the album would be like 7.75, 8.25, somewhere in there. I'm just going to go ahead and say 8.5 just because it's really 8 out of 11 is a relatively higher bit just because one of the songs is the same song, which I don't know why that particularly happened. There's not too much of a difference, but I just looked within the tone. It's just the tone behind it. To talk about some of these, J-Lo really has some good melodies on this particular album. She has some real rousing type singing just in the pitch behind it, real affable type spark to kind of get some of these just within the pitch. This is a pleasing type R&B album to kind of have within that format, and especially in like the early days, like how R&B was starting to sift away from just like strictly mostly ballads with 1 or 2 dance club songs on there. It's just a good pitch that this is actually for 2002. This is a pretty electric type one to kind of get. I definitely feel like this would probably be damn near a classic just in the tone. Definitely state of the art for the time, because this is before Usher's Confessions. This is before Beyonce's solo debut and Dangerously in Love. It's before B2K came out with like their Bump 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 album, some of those type pitches. So it's just a good type time to kind of get some of this. That was just kind of a primer for the shifting sounds, what was happening. So it's just kind of a relative trailblaze type project that did a lot. It's definitely some aspect type stuff. One of these songs with some great melodies on here is Still. It's like a rousing kind of evening marination kind of get. Definitely it's like a relative kind of disco jive to kind of have within that pitch. Just some wine and dine kind of gleaming just within that fair. Nice melodies about this and tone overall in this particular song. So it's just nice groove to kind of get within that. Probably need another song like this just within the fair behind it. It's real nice kind of one. Trying to think of some other folks, like Beyonce was pretty good at doing songs like this just within the appeal behind it. It's real nice, basic. In my opinion, this is a better version of like a slow jam. This is more slow jam type territory, even though this is like mid-pace where it has like some relative groove about it. This is what I would feel like would be a slow jam on an R&B album as far as those pitch can happen. A song like Still or a song like You Belong to Me, some of those type of pitches, those are more slowing down the tempo within that relative type fare. But there are slower songs even than that, like I had about some of the songs I didn't recommend, was just within the tone. So, Loving You is a quality one. Now, this one reminds me of Biggie's Juicy from like the early mid-90s as far as those pitches kind of happen in more like an R&B sense. This has a lot of similarities to that particular one. This very plushy kind of softcore makeshift comedy to kind of get within that sense, and it's like some glazed smoke to kind of have within that fare. So it's just good type aspect here. It's basically like getting Juicy song just within the aspect of just having like more sing-songy type flavor just within the flavor behind it. This kind of similar to like I'm Glad, I would have to say, just a little bit more luscious within the tone behind it. Just has like nice butter smooth factor just to be able to say within that pitch. So it's just a good type of appeal for it. Just good to get some R&B makeshift. Feels like something Mary J. Blige would do, some of those type pitches, just standard NY type comedy within the sense just being lost in traffic and just like a more softcore type sense. Now, I don't know if I talked about You Belong to Me, but this is another nice one here. There's like a relative kind of dance club push to kind of get just a mild reminder of like the 1999 J-Lo, I'd had to say. Good mid-pace groove once again, just like Still, I'd had to say, and it's like some good foot tap. It's like some good foot tap jive to kind of get within that pitch behind it. So this is another necessary song on this particular album. This has a nice groove about it, a nice quality album cut to kind of get here that just has some extra flair. I kind of question just an extra hit to kind of get out this particular product that nailed the particular vibe. Definitely glad for this song being on this particular product just within the tone behind it. So it just has some good relative dance type step. Like once again with the lack of dance club songs on here in terms like the relative just kickback Friday night type J-Lo, this is like the closest thing. This is more like a slow dance type vibe about it. Just kind of like it's like a slower mid-tempo type song, nice slow jam just to kind of get within that sense. I mean, it's a dance club, not so much slow jam song, but slow dance type song within the pitch. That's the better phrase for as those pitch can have. But it's just within the tone as far as getting that. Just a good, nice one to kind of have for some of that type fare. Just mild throwback, like. But this is about a lot. Jenny from the Block and You Belong to Me are like the closest things they have in like some relative, just kind of dance step out in like a relative close to the weekend type sense or something for like some social push as far as that pitch. As far as that pitch can have, so it's a good type flair. And then I've been thinking is a nice one. This is an example of like I've been thinking it's an example of a down tempo song that nails the particular appeal. It's like some summer evening kind of gazing to kind of get here. Just some good rumination about that. Grand day kind of after hours wine and dine type romance to have off this particular song. So it's a good type of appeal. Just a little bit more of like more typical kind of Sunday type flair. Just the aspect of just kind of takes it back to like the 1999 album, like a song like If You Had My Love. Just a little bit more pep towards it, a little bit more not quite as like deep thought, but just a relative kind of just relative rumination, just in the sense of just like more kind of down to earth type rumination, just in the tone behind it. Not necessarily simp type music, but chit chat. I'd say just more chatty within the pitch. Relative Sunday, just type of commerce just in the pitch behind it. Standard Sunday activity day as far as those pitch can have in our evening within the flair. I just look at it a good type tone. But yeah, I would have to say so that's a concept about this particular album here. So 8.5 out of 10. The Soja score, I'd probably say I'll probably give the Soja score like probably like a 7.5 out of 10 because there's some good stuff on here. It's definitely good for like it's definitely good flame type music you can get within that pitch with along with like some good East Coast kind of traffic type music within the flair. Just some softcore kind of makeshift just within the tone behind it. But you know, like I've been saying, probably could use like another dance type moment on here. I think within the aspect of just being able to have JLo wonder if she could do like other types of music and develop some new strengths just within the pitch as far as just relying on more songs like Waiting for Tonight and the singles that hit #1 off of JLo from 2001 was just in the pitch. She mostly nails it, but it is within the pitch that this is really kind of like a shucks situation because you look after it. It works that she strengthened further aspects to be able to do it, but it's just within the tone that she was pretty damn good at being able to do those dance clip type moments. And I do feel, I don't want to say it's sorely lacking a hit like Waiting for Tonight, but it's just within the pitch as far as saying that it probably would have been a good component to have had on here just in the pitch behind it. So that's the appeal behind it. But just being able to say that, it's just some good basic kind of standard, you know, routine type commerce Sunday music. It's just like I said, it's more beginning of the week type music, just between about Sunday and Wednesday, just within the tone. Maybe like Jenny from the Block and maybe Jenny from the Block and You Belong to Me, or a little bit of weekend type appeal. But for the most part, it's just more kind of this flame type music, just in a relative kind of like flame type music, just in a relative kind of day to day, just in terms of like just being bubbly within the pitch. That's just within the tone. So it's good type appeals for that. But I look after the tone. So in terms of the future, like apparently JLo dropped a sequel to this album in 2024 called This Is Me Now. Good type pitch. It seems like that would have eventually been coming, considering that this album's called This Is Me Then. Was just within the pitch behind it. It's been a while since JLo dropped an album. I kind of felt like she was going to back in the day. The last album I remember that she dropped was AKA from 2014, so it's been quite some time. It'd be a good type pitch, kind of get some more of these just in the pitch behind it. She does have like a greatest hits album. There's some other ones I'm going to have to get to within those pitches. I do definitely want to review On the Six and JLo, some of those type ones, but this is some good type appeal. This is a very seldom type project, kind of not as commonly talked about nowadays. Does have some top 3 singles on here, some pitches like that. Got to the 4th single, lots of good bops and appeals about it. This is a pretty balanced type R&B album and kind of a trailblazer.